شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Brothers and sisters in Iman, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight, my lecture is mainly focusing on how corporate powers play a major role in focusing globalization and its effect on society. And from the verses that I just read to you, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O ye believers, be conscious of Allah as you should be conscious of. And see that you do not die save in the state of submission to Allah. Then it goes on to say, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ till the end of the ayah. Is holding fast together to the cable of Allah, and the cable or rope here means the deen of Allah. The way of life of totally submitting to the will of Allah. Anything other than that is not the deen or is not Islam. The corporate powers, like I said yesterday in my ending of the lecture, hybrid wars could be psychological, could be by weapons. But I've emphasized now and then that nowadays they're using silent weapons for quiet wars. These silent weapons are weapons that are working out our minds and hearts for them to win us so that we be at par with what they are planning against mankind in general. The law of hybrid war is one of the most significant strategic developments that the US and the corporate power has ever spearheaded. And the transitioning of color revolutions to unconventional wars is expected to dominate the destabilizing trends of the coming decades. Right now, it's happening. All these demonstrations, in whatever country you're looking at, are hybrid wars or color revolutions. There is the orange revolution, there is the purple revolution, there is the green revolution. These are called color revolutions. Those unaccustomed to approaching geopolitics from the hybrid war perspective might struggle to understand where the next ones might occur. But it's actually not that difficult to identify the regions and countries most at risk of falling victim to this new form of aggression. Most of the time, these aggressions are done through the youth of those countries where they want to topple a system. But the end game is what is important in our lectures. What is the end game? Now I'll give you two examples. One is the aid example. When one comes to aid you, either by providing school fees, or providing small micro enterprise funding, or providing antiretroviral medicine for those who are going through the AIDS epidemic. These things are pre-planned. And the end game is always come gradualistic. It won't come at one time, fearing that you might be able to see where they are heading to. So they come slowly. They start by helping you with providing water. They provide you with good roads towards your villages. They can provide you with some funding for small micro enterprise, and so on and so forth. But at the very end, then comes something like what we've been talking about. There is a national policy in our country that wants us all now to be talking about LGBTQ. So they come politely and humbly, like so-and-so, I'm very sorry. I don't understand where my country is heading to. Why? Said, now all that aid that I was being given and I was transferring it to you has stopped. I have to talk about LGBTQ or we get nothing. So are you with me or are you not? Now if you say, no, according to our ethics and traditions and culture, we can't talk about these things, then that's where they stop funding you. And through these things is where hybrid wars and color revolutions happen. Because those who are benefiting from that aid or funding will always be coming against you like, please, now what's the matter with you? Stop these ethics things and culture. We are suffering. Let these guys talk about whatever they want to talk about, only that they fund us. And you might be principled and say, no, you don't know where these guys are heading to. The key to the focus is in accepting that hybrid wars are externally provoked asymmetrically. Conflicts predicated on sabotaging concrete geo-economic interests, and proceeding from this starting point, it's relatively easy to pinpoint where they might strike next. For example, Museveni is saying no to LGBTQ issues. So for those of us who are in this field and are following this up, we know where it's going to pinch Museveni. Because these guys have many ways of pinching you. They'll talk among themselves. For example, they talk to Japan and say, all the cars that they use for transport in this country a Japanese car. Could you please just go on a slow down on spare parts? So if you order any spare parts in Japan, it takes 8 months to reach you. What are you going to do with the transport system? And can those who feel the pinch persevere, walking on a daily basis from Kibaha to town, from Bagamoyo to town? You have to walk now. There's no more bus, no transport. Albert Pike is one of the greatest thinkers in as far as Freemasonry is concerned. Albert Pike is like Adam Weishaupt. These are the real Masonry backbone. Says the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur. That those of a class lower than ours, of the Illuminati, between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. Brothers and sisters, these are things, sometimes I just feel like, no, Stambuli, don't talk about these things. It's too early. People cannot digest these things. It's too high. Because those who talk to you before me don't bring about things like geopolitics. Don't talk to you about what is going on at the global level. I repeat, they talk to you about things that happened between the 7th and the 10th century. So most of you, this is strange for you. I repeat, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the systems obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view, This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Albert Pike, in a letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, excerpt from William Carr's Pawns in the Game. Who is Albert Pike? Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree and Supreme Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry. He created the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite, co-created the KKK, Ku Klux Klan 11th letter, 11 times 3. And remains a revered figure in global masonry. In 1891, when Pike died, his funeral was held in the Washington, D.C. Freemasonic Temple at midnight with the room draped entirely in black. Now let me refresh your minds. I won't go far. Let me start with Zanzibar. Do you see the sultans of Zanzibar? Do you see them wearing badges on their left side of the chest? Please, don't agree with what I'm saying. Go and look at these badges. What do they symbolize? They felt great when they were being put these badges on there. But go and look at what are these badges for. When the British give you these badges, what are they trying to say to their coming generation? And if you know what exactly these badges mean, would you still be proud? And this is how they play us too close, because we are not an informed mass. We don't know what they do to us. When they give you these badges, it's like they're telling their coming generation, like, he is one of us. If you want to get into this place, come through him. He is our agent. That's why the word agent too. In Swahili you say wakala. And you are proud to be an agent of the British. Now, Albert Pike, being a 33rd degree Mason, and if you know the Rothschild and the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan, then you know what is going on this earth. Now, if he could say this and he died in 1891, what was coming? I told you about these things. 1798, Omanis signed a protection agreement with the British Zionists. 1880, protection agreement between Bahrain and the British Zionists. 1892, 5 states signed dependency agreement with the British Zionists. That is Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Sharjah, and Ajman. 1896, Kuwait signed protection agreement with the British Zionists. 1915, Saudi Arabia signs protection agreement with the British Zionists. And 1916, Qatar signs protection agreement with the British Zionists. 1917, Lord Balfour writes to Lord Rothschild and tells him now you can establish the Israeli nation. How many of you knew that it is these 10 countries that gave way to the establishment of the Israeli nation? Because yesterday, when I asked you about those who attended the Berlin conference, I told you that Kuwait is one of them. And Kuwait, by this time, they were the Ottoman Empire ruling the Islamic world. Now, don't agree with me. Look at these countries and tell me which country has there ever been an uprising and succeeded. Now, do you know why Bahrain, even if Shias rise up, they can never reach the peak? Though they are the majority. And the same British and the Americans and the French and all don't go for democracy, that the majority rules. It doesn't work out in Bahrain. Neither does it do in Saudi Arabia, nor in Kuwait. When Saddam tried, look at what they did. Why? Because there was a time when Saudi needed Kuwait. For the Ibn Saud to take over Saudi, they needed Kuwait. Now when you hit Kuwait, they'll have to come to their mercy. They'll have to come and help them out. So they paid the Americans to come and help Kuwait gain back their territory. But we don't talk these things in mosques. And when we talk, we do it like a passing comment. We don't go seriously into these things. We don't provide evidence on these things. So our generation, younger generation, don't know the truth about these things. But it's time for change. We need to change the way we look at things. When they fight us with silent weapons, in their silent wars, quiet wars, what are these silent weapons? Today I was doing a program in Swahili on the same issue. We call it utandawazi na athari zake kwa jamii, globalization and its effect on society. And the presenter brought about a very relevant and very important issue that he assumes must be discussed on the media so as to inform and educate the masses. So I said, what do you think we should talk about? Then he reckons me, I think, why don't we talk about the effect of pornography on youth? I said, it's okay with me. So we went on the program. And he was shocked when I was giving him statistics. He was shocked. And this is a silent weapon. For you who are old enough, the magazine Playboy started being printed in 1953 with Marilyn Monroe on the cover. 1953. And it was the trend for all university students to have this magazine to be at par with the time that they were living in. That is where pornography started, in as far as print media was concerned. 30% of what's on the internet, 30%. If the internet is 100%, then 30% is pornography. Now listen to me good. Then there are millions of porn sites. Millions. But one that's not very famous. Not very famous. Not that classy. In 2018, got 33.5 billion visits within a year. $33.5 billion visits in a year, 2018. Daily visits exceeded 100 million. This is not a famous one. Daily visits globally, 100 million. Every minute, 64,000 visitors arrive. Every minute. And I repeat, this is not a well-known site. In 2010, it is estimated that all websites, 12% were all pornography by 2010. 12% of all websites on the internet, 12% were pornography. That means that in 2010, there were more than 24 million porn websites. What killed Playboy? Cell phone phenomenon. Now you didn't need Playboy. You don't even need computers. Through smartphone, you can visit websites. So 1953 to 2023, that's 70 years. Remember yesterday I told you they planned for 50 to 100 years, how can we sway the society? So within 70 years, they moved you from Playboy magazine to enabling you to have television to the point that now you look at this through your phones. And they estimate that between that time, 1953, when it reached 2018, 33.5 billion visits per year. Now there is the addiction part of it and the damage that it does to relationships at home, relationships with boyfriends and girlfriends. All this needs another session altogether to talk about. How can we reboot the society that's crazy about pornography? How can we reboot like we reboot computers? Socio-political structural vulnerabilities. The following are the most common socio-political structural vulnerabilities as they relate to the preparation of hybrid war. Ethnicity is one. Religion is two. History, administrative boundaries, socio-economic disparity, and physical geography. All being attacked by globalization, whether consciously or unconsciously. All I'm telling you about websites and pornography is because of the negative globalization. Now, when we talk about globalization, I always insist that there are the two sides, the good side and the bad side. Now, there's the good side of internet, but the bad side of internet gives access to such things as pornography. In hybrid wars, ethnicity can easily be passed over through WhatsApp and all this. Attack this tribe, do this, can you see this tribe? They're looking at us as the lower class. They're becoming so stupid, and so on and so forth. Religion, Muslims against others, Muslims against other Muslims. All globalization. Because of what? Because of internet. The internet of things. How do we become cyborg? How can artificial intelligence do to us whatever they want that to do to us? What is artificial intelligence? Another session altogether. We can just be briefly talking about it and the effects of artificial intelligence. What they are planning for us through artificial intelligence. They started it during the COVID-19. Most people are told, excuse me, the economy is not doing well, please go home, work from home. After some time, sorry, I cannot pay you. I'll just give you your money, for the years you worked for me, and please start something for yourself. That's the Great Reset. The fourth industrial revolution is what brings artificial intelligence. If one person can do the job of 9 others, why employ the 9 others? Why don't I just pay this one good and he does the job for me? Why pay 100,000 each for 9 people? That's 900,000, almost a million. When I can pay 200,000 to this person and he does the job of all the 9. That's the Great Reset. Now, globalization does harm to all, or through all this history can be talked about and always have negative meaning. As same as the administrative boundaries. This was our place before you came in. The objective being, the grand objective behind every hybrid war is to disrupt multipolar transnational connective projects through externally provoked identity conflict, ethnic, religious, regional, political, etc. within a targeted transit state. So if you think you don't want to go our way, if we are talking about the LGBTQ and you don't want to join us, then we know through these things how to start up the hybrid war. Hybrid wars are always preceded by a period of societal and structural preconditioning. The first type deals with the informational and soft power aspects that maximize key demographics, acceptance of the oncoming destabilization, and guide them into believing that some type of action or passive acceptance of others thereof is required in order to change the present state of affairs. The second type concerns the various tricks that the US resorts to in order to have the target government unintentionally aggravate the various social, political differences that have already been identified. The ones we talked about before this, ethnic, religious, historical. With the goal of creating cleavages of identity resentment that are then more susceptible to societal preconditioning and subsequent NGO-directed political organizing, linked in most cases to the Soros Foundation and or National Endowment for Democracy. These are in the front line of these things, these two civil society organizations. Wherever there had been color revolution or hybrid wars, these two organizations are behind it. Arab Spring and all this, they were behind it. How awakened should we be? Unfortunately, certain policies have been successful in separating Muslim and the hearts of Muslim groups from one another. Today, we need unity. More than ever. That's why I've always said since my first day of this lecture that our difference will solve them later. At the moment, there's something bigger coming against us. Now, it doesn't care whether you are Shia, you are Sunni, you are Salafi, you are Ibadi, you are Christian, you are Hindu, or you are Jews. It doesn't care. It's fighting against any established religion. There has to be many seminars and conferences, interfaith, interdenomination. People present papers, deep thinkers, movers and shakers of those communities. Those religious institutions have to come forward and talk as one, because this thing coming has no religious boundaries. It looks at every religion in a negative manner. It wants to wipe it off the earth, so that Satanism comes on as the new age religion. Who is going to tell us about these things? Someone has to stand up and be counted. Who? To expand on the tactics of structural preconditioning, the most commonly employed and globally recognized one is sanctions. That's what's coming next when you say no to what they want. The implicit goal of which, although not always successful, has always been to make life more difficult for the average citizen so that he or she becomes more amenable to the idea of regime change and is thus more easily shepherded into acting upon these externally instilled impulses. You shepherd them, they become like sheep. Less known, however, are the more oblique, yet presently and almost ubiquitously implemented methods of achieving this goal, and this surrounds the power that the US has to affect certain budgetary functions of targeted states, namely the amount of revenue that they receive and what precisely they spend it on. That's why this is the policy. Human rights for the LGBTQ all have to follow track. If you don't, then you are not with us, and we can't fund any of your projects. This is the kind of things we need to focus on. How can we educate our masses? This is what globalization entails. These things are embedded into the philosophy of globalization. So what's its effect on society? Can society stand against people who stop funding you after they've funded you for the past 10 to 20 years, and all of a sudden they come in because you don't want to support the LGBTQI issue, they say, no, we don't fund you no more. Are the people ready to face such kind of move? Have you institutionalized your way of life? Can you take care of them, those who are vulnerable? Or you let the NGOs come around and tell the people, it's not us, it is your government. It's not us, it's your community. It's not us, it's your and so forth and so on. Why don't those who are responsible in masjids, in community centers, in societies, why don't they come forward and talk these things, educate the masses, inform them, do statistics, and see how can we get on without funding, without donations from outside? How can we take care of our own? What does it take for those who are responsible? What does it take for those who have to say, no, enough is enough, we'll take care of business ourselves? And why does it take this long for people to realize that we can't rely on the West, on America, because we don't think alike? What more to be said? What can we say more than this? This is what I wanted to talk to you about. And I've tried to show you these things because I believe they matter. And I know they do matter. Most of us are ignorant. Most of those in charge of societies are ignorant. But time has come for us to talk facts and not talk what people love to hear, but talk what people are supposed to hear. These issues concern the fourth industrial revolution, but it has its own opportunities and challenges. Same as the other industrial revolutions had their own opportunities and challenges. Time doesn't allow me to go deep into this thing. Inshallah, we'll be trying to see what we can do about these things. I've started talking to the youth, and I'll talk to some few people who are movers and shakers. I've started my conversations with some, and for your information, maybe I'll be a day longer in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. So just to inform you, I'd be around on Thursday. We'd have another session, maybe the last one before I leave. And I might leave you on Friday, if Allah wills. So we pray for one another. And I hope to keep my communication with the relevant persons. We've already talked about these things. And I hope you keep the spirit like the one you've had ever since we started these lectures. May Allah guide us and bless us all abundantly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.